I would say that there's a blogger I follow in China. I think she was saying that, I hope I can remember this correctly, but she was saying that in China, it was, or it is innovation and then regulation. And in in Europe, it's regulation and then no innovation. And in the US, it's innovation and no regulation. So you've got these different, I think this is kind of a wide paintbrush. But the bottom line is, I think that there are very few things that I have noticed that have happened in China recently that I would be scratching my head about. So, for example, in my nonprofit adventures with the Dakshina Foundation, I have spent 14 years examining the for-profit sector of education in India very closely. And we've even had them as vendors and, you know, paid them to provide services to our students, etc. We had a very long history with the Indian, let's say, tutoring industry, which is the industry, exact same industry that the Chinese government cracked down upon. The Indian government also is extremely upset at this industry. And from my point of view, rightfully so. And I don't think of the players in that industry by any stretch of the imagination as being high quality. I think they're, I would say, ruthless capitalists. And so if you just and I'm going to use that as example to just go to the others. If you have a situation where a set of universities or university has 10,000 seats, and there are 1 million people aspiring to get those seats, which is somewhat similar to the situation with the IITs in India. The 10, 15,000 seats and north of half a million to a million kids interested in those seats. There's a basic problem of a large number of students interested in a very small number of seats. Anytime you have that situation, capitalism is going to lead to enterprises that come up with trying to find ways where they'll say that if you give me X, I can increase your odds of getting that seat. And in an unregulated world, that type of capitalist endeavor is going to go bananas, which it did in China. So, what ended up happening in China is that every Chinese parent wants their kids to go to the best schools. And all these for profit education companies come up and say, look, if you want to go to Peking University or, Tsinghua, whatever, we are the toll bridge that you have to pass through. And the toll bridge has two costs. It has a dollar or RMB cost, and it has a lot of effort cost. And the end result of all of that is that Chinese couples come to the conclusion that they really can't have very many kids because it's so expensive and so draining and so complex. So I think the government has its heart in the right place when it says we don't want this kind of a system because it reduces people's interest in having reasonable sized families, etc., which goes against the country's things. But on the other side, the problem that this type of situation has is there's no easy answer. Anytime unless you increase those 10,000 seats to 100,000 seats, or you give people other avenues, which the CCP is trying to do, it leads to a quandary. And like there was a joke, I think, on Twitter that these for-profit education companies in China have converted their facilities into high-end cafes where you go in to have a coffee and then you sit down at a table with a very high-priced tutor who, ineffectively continues to tutor you, but you just pay for the coffee. And the coffee, instead of being $5, is $500. And so you kind of sidestep, it's just a coffee shop, so it's kind of funny. But anyway, so I think that on many fronts in China, it is actually healthy for the country to have a robust competitive environment. And I think in the case of the large players, in Chinese tech, they're pretty high quality players, but in many cases the rules were not defined. And so, in a Wild West scenario, you're not really breaking any laws. You're just proceeding with what's acceptable in the Wild West. And so I think Chinese government coming down and saying, "Hey, wait a minute. I think some of these things, if we, tweak it somewhat, at the end of the day, we end up with a better ecosystem." And I think that's what they're driving towards. So that's my 2 cents on that.